My mom accidentally ruined my gender reveal party, and then, when I was already crying and furious, she said, "You can always have another baby." But the thing was, this was not the first accident involving her. She had already accidentally announced my pregnancy at Christmas before my husband and I were ready to tell everyone. She had accidentally posted our ultrasound photos on Facebook before we had even shared them privately with all the people who mattered to us. Every time she crossed a line, she wrapped it in the same excuse. She was just excited. She did not mean to. It was an accident. So by the time our gender reveal party came around, my husband and I made her promise, very clearly, that there would be no accidents this time. We had planned a simple reveal, nothing huge, nothing dramatic, just something that felt sweet and special to us. We had a clear glass tub filled with water, and my husband and I were going to drop in bath bombs that would turn the water either pink or blue. Everyone had gathered around to watch. People had their phones out. There was that little buzzing feeling in the air that happens right before a big family moment. My husband was holding the bath bombs. I was standing beside him, nervous and happy, trying to take in the fact that we were seconds away from learning something about our baby that we would remember forever. Then we started counting down. And right as everyone reached the final numbers, my mother stepped forward. She leaned over the tub, saying she wanted a better angle. And before I could even react, she knocked the bath bombs out of my husband's hands. They fell straight into the water. The water turned pink instantly. Before anyone could even properly celebrate, before my husband and I could hug, before I could process that we were having a girl, my mother started screaming, "It's a girl! It's a girl!" Then she turned away from the tub and threw her arms around my husband. I was just standing there, holding the unused bath bombs that were supposed to be part of our moment, watching my mother celebrate like the reveal had belonged to her. I was furious. I was crying. I told her to get out. And almost immediately, my family jumped in to defend her. My father said, "Your mother's just enthusiastic." I could barely believe what I was hearing. Enthusiastic. That was what he called it. Not selfish, not controlling, not stealing a moment she had already been warned not to interfere with, just enthusiastic. There was a microphone nearby because we had planned on doing karaoke later, so I grabbed it and turned toward my mom. "Apologize," I demanded through tears. My mother rolled her eyes at me. "I already said I was sorry. Now you're making things awkward. Look at how uncomfortable everyone looks." She said it like she was concerned about everyone else, as if I was the one ruining the party by being upset, instead of her being the one who had taken the reveal out of our hands. I tried to explain that we only got one gender reveal. We would never get that exact moment back, but she held her hand up toward my face and cut me off. "Fine, I'm sorry. It was an accident. I'm just excited about my first granddaughter while you're being a huge party pooper. I'm Sav, is an X times a Cle 5. Before I could even answer, my sister walked over with a smirk on her face. "She raised you," my sister said. "You should honestly be grateful." That was when I walked away. At the time, I told myself I was being the bigger person. I told myself I did not want to make the party even worse. I told myself everyone already knew what happened and that maybe, if I stepped back, things would calm down. But I should not have been so nice, because the next day, I found out that my mother had appointed herself co-host of my upcoming baby shower without telling me. She had already started changing details. Details I had picked. Details my husband and I had talked about. She changed the colors from pink to purple. She changed the cupcakes to donuts. She rearranged things with the venue and acted like it was her event to manage. It became clear very quickly that she was not trying to help me have the baby shower I wanted. She was building the baby shower she wanted. And then, as if that was not enough, she showed up to the baby shower venue wearing the exact same dress I had chosen for myself. It was not similar. It was not the same color in a different style. It was the same dress. When I saw her, she gave this fake little laugh and said, "Oh, I thought everyone would be wearing this. My bad." But that was a lie. She had called my husband before the shower and asked him what I would be wearing. She pretended she wanted to coordinate with me but not match me. He did not realize what she was really doing. So he told her, and there she was, standing in my baby shower venue, dressed exactly like me. But somehow, that still was not the part that upset me the most. During the shower, she stood up and gave a speech nobody had asked her to give. She lifted her glass and announced, "Thank you all so much for coming to this party. It means so much to me that you're just as excited to meet baby Charlotte as I am." The room went silent. My whole body went cold. We had not told anyone the name. We had not even fully finalized it ourselves yet. Charlotte was written in our private baby journal, a journal we kept in the nightstand in our bedroom. There was only one way she could have known. She had gone into our bedroom during one of her visits. She had gone through our belongings without permission. She had found the journal, opened it, read it, and then used what she found to make another public moment about herself. I stood up slowly and looked straight at her. "You're not invited to the delivery room." The whole room seemed to hold its breath. My mother's face turned red. "You can't keep me from my granddaughter's birth," she gasped. I said, "Watch me." Half the family stormed out with her. The other half stayed, but they looked uncomfortable, like they were embarrassed for me, or maybe embarrassed that I had finally said something out loud. That night, She posted on Facebook about being alienated from her grandbaby by her ungrateful daughter. The next few days were quiet, but not peaceful. There were passive-aggressive messages. There were social media posts. There were comments from relatives who clearly had only heard her version of the story. Everything was framed like I had suddenly become cruel for no reason. Like my mother was a poor, excited grandmother being punished for loving too much. Then, the week before my scheduled labor date, something happened that changed everything. I was taking a nap in the living room when I heard the front door suddenly swing open. I woke up confused, heart racing, and looked toward the doorway. My mother was standing there. She was holding a key to our house. "There you are," she said casually. "I'm here to apologize, so let me see the birth of my granddaughter, okay?" My blood went cold. For a second, the delivery room fight did not even matter. The Facebook posts did not matter. The matching dress did not matter. My mother had a key to my house that I did not know she had, and she had used it to let herself in while I was asleep. This was not normal anymore. This was not excitement. This was obsessive. I called my husband and asked him to come over immediately. I told him to escort my mother out and take the key from her. After she was gone, I looked at him and said, "We need to change the locks. My mother is out of control." I was shaking when I said it. And just like I feared, my mother came back that night. This time, she was not pretending to apologize. She was angry. She was furious. She was standing there with that same key in her hand. And she said, "If I can't see my granddaughter, nobody can." I froze. Those words kept repeating in my head. If I can't see my granddaughter, nobody can. My husband moved fast. He stepped between us and put his hand up, like he was physically creating a wall between my mother and me. He told her she needed to leave right now, and that what she had just said was completely out of line. She started arguing, but he was already guiding her toward the door. His voice was firm in a way I had never really heard before. I could not move. I could not think straight. I just stood there and watched him walk her outside toward her car. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold my phone. All I could think was, what did she mean by that? Did she mean she would hurt me? Did she mean she would try to take the baby? Did she mean she would do something reckless just to make sure she got what she wanted? Through the window, I could see her yelling at my husband in the driveway, waving her arms around. He did not yell back. He just held out his hand until she finally dropped the key into it. Then she got into her car and drove away. Only then did I breathe. My husband came back inside, locked the door behind him, and started checking every room. He checked windows. He checked doors. He checked entry points I had not even thought about. I was already scrolling through my phone, trying to find a locksmith. My fingers kept slipping on the screen because I was trembling so much. I found one that did emergency calls and scheduled them for 8 the next morning, which felt impossibly far away. My husband asked if I was okay. I just shook my head. I was not okay. Not even close. After I hung up with the locksmith, I knew we needed to call someone official. I needed someone who could tell me what our options were and whether I was right to be this scared. So I called the non-emergency police line and explained the situation to the woman who answered. She listened, then connected me to an officer named Brandon Banks. Officer Banks asked me to start from the beginning, so I told him everything. I told him about the gender reveal. I told him about the baby shower. I told him about my mother announcing the name, which meant she had gone through our private things. I told him about the key. I told him about her coming into the house without permission. And most importantly, I told him about the threat she had just made. He did not sound surprised. He did not sound dismissive. He did not sound like he thought I was overreacting. That alone made me feel a little better. He explained that I needed to start keeping a detailed log of everything she did. Dates, times, exact words if I remembered them, and names of anyone who witnessed each incident. He told me to save every text, every voicemail, every email, every social media post. He said that if her behavior kept escalating, I might want to consider a temporary restraining order. Then he gave me his direct number in case anything else happened. I wrote everything down on a piece of paper, my hand still shaking. My husband wanted to call his parents immediately and tell them what had happened. I was not sure. Part of me wanted to wait until the locks were changed. Part of me did not want to make everything explode even more. We ended up arguing about it. He said we needed to get ahead of whatever story my mother was going to tell. I said I was worried that telling people would make the whole situation bigger. Then he pointed out that my mother was probably already on the phone, spinning a version where she was the victim, and if we waited too long, people would believe her first. I hated that he was right. But he was. We finally agreed to send one message to the entire family group chat at the same time. Just the facts, no dramatic language, no emotional paragraphs. Just what happened, so nobody could claim we were hiding things or exaggerating. We waited until later that night so we could figure out exactly what to say. At 11 o'clock, I typed out a message explaining that my mother had used a key we did not know she had to enter our house without permission, and that she had made a threatening statement about our baby. I said she was not welcome at our home anymore until further notice, and that we were taking steps to secure the house. I kept it short and factual. While I was doing that, my husband was going through our smart home app. That was when he found another problem. Months earlier, when my mother had helped with a few deliveries, we had given her access to the garage door opener through the app. He removed her access immediately. Then he checked every other entry point we could control digitally. We changed the keypad code by the side door. We checked every permission. We locked everything down as tightly as possible. My phone started buzzing almost immediately after I sent the family message. I turned it face down. I did not look. I tried to go to bed, but I could not stop hearing things. Every creak of the house settling made me sit up. Every car that drove past made my chest tighten. Every branch tapping against a window made me imagine my mother outside again. I kept picturing her trying her key in the lock, realizing it did not work anymore, getting angry, and then trying a window or forcing a door. Eventually, I ended up on the couch with every light in the living room on, wrapped in a blanket even though I was not cold. My husband came out around 2 in the morning and found me there. He did not try to convince me to go back to bed. He just started doing rounds through the house, checking every window lock and every door lock again and again. I dozed off for maybe 20 minutes at a time, then jerked awake, convinced I had heard something. That continued until the sun started coming up. Only then did I feel safe enough to close my eyes for more than a few minutes. The locksmith arrived right at 8, just like he promised. He changed the locks on both the front and back doors. Then my husband asked about extra security, so the locksmith installed heavy deadbolt bars that could slide across from the inside. He also put in window sensors that would send alerts to my phone if any window was opened. I watched him take the old locks off, and it felt like watching chains come off the house. I was exhausted. My body hurt from trying to sleep on the couch. My back was killing me. I could barely stand up straight, but I did not care. At least now, my mother could not just walk in whenever she wanted. The locksmith tested everything twice, showed us how the new locks worked, and handed us the only copies of the new keys. After he left, my husband and I just stood there looking at the new locks. We were both too tired to say anything. Around 10:30 that morning, Officer Banks called to check on me. I told him about the locksmith and the new security measures. He said that was smart. Then he walked me through what would happen if I decided to file for a temporary restraining order. He explained that I would need to go to the courthouse and fill out paperwork describing the pattern of behavior and why I felt threatened. A judge would review it and decide whether to grant a temporary order. Then there would be a hearing later where both sides could present their case. He reminded me again to save every text message, every voicemail, every Facebook post, anything my mother sent or posted. He also suggested I talk to my neighbors and ask if they had seen anything unusual near our house, like my mother's car driving by or her walking around the property. I wrote all of it down, even though my hand was cramping from exhaustion. Right after I hung up with him, I called the hospital where I planned to deliver. I was transferred a few times before I finally ended up speaking with a nurse named Marta Chang in labor and delivery. I explained the situation and asked what could be done to keep my mother from showing up when I was in labor. Marta did not sound shocked. She sounded like she had handled difficult family situations before. She told me she could set up a password system on my chart, so nobody could get information about me without knowing the password, not even whether I had been admitted. She said she would add my mother's name to a specific no-visitor list and notify security. She explained that the labor and delivery unit stayed locked, and visitors had to be buzzed in. Without the password, nobody would get through those doors. A wave of relief washed over me. At least that was one thing I did not have to worry about as much. Marta gave me her direct extension and told me to call if I had any other concerns or needed to update the security plan. That afternoon, my father called. I almost did not answer, but I decided I should at least hear what he had to say. He started by telling me my mother was really hurt and that I needed to understand she was just excited about her first grandchild. I told him that breaking into someone's house and threatening their baby was not excitement. It was control. He said I was overreacting because of hormones and that I would understand when I calmed down. I felt my blood pressure spike. I told him this had nothing to do with hormones and everything to do with my mother crossing serious lines. Then he started his usual speech. She was still my mother. Family forgives family. I should not be so harsh. I hung up. I could not listen to him make excuses for her anymore, not after everything that had happened in the last 24 hours. The next morning, I woke up on the couch with my neck hurting and my whole body stiff. I picked up my phone, and the first thing I saw was a Facebook notification. My sister had posted something at 2 in the morning. It's sad when people cut off family over simple misunderstandings instead of choosing forgiveness. I took a screenshot immediately and saved it in a folder on my phone, labeled Evidence, with the date and time visible. Part of me felt ridiculous collecting screenshots like that. It felt petty. It felt like something a dramatic person would do. But Officer Banks had told me to document everything, so that was what I did. I added a note about who might have seen the post and when it was made. My husband came downstairs around 7 and found me still on the couch, scrolling through my phone. He sat beside me, and I showed him the post. He looked exhausted and angry at the same time. We talked for a while about how my mother could not be allowed to use him to get to me. Then he pulled out his phone and started blocking her on everything. First, her number, then her email, then Facebook, then Instagram, even LinkedIn. I watched him do it and felt this huge wave of relief because it meant we were really doing this together. We promised each other that neither of us would talk to my mother alone anymore. If she somehow got through to one of us, we would tell the other immediately. We would only respond together, if we responded at all. After that, I felt like I needed to get organized. I grabbed a notebook from our desk drawer and sat down at the kitchen table. I started writing down everything I could remember about my mother's behavior over the past few months. The pregnancy announcement at Christmas, the ultrasound photos on Facebook, the gender reveal disaster, the baby shower takeover, the matching dress, the baby name announcement, the fact that she had gone through our bedroom, the unauthorized key, the threat about the baby. I wrote down exact quotes when I could remember them. I listed who had been there to witness each incident. It took almost an hour. When I was done, I just sat there and stared at the pages. Seeing everything written out like that changed something in me. I realized how much I had been minimizing. I had been telling myself she was just excited. I had been telling myself she did not mean it. I had been telling myself it was not that bad. But when I looked at the full pattern, all in one place, it was bad. It was worse than I had let myself admit. Around 10 that morning, our neighbor John stopped by. He was holding some mail that had been delivered to his house by mistake. I thanked him and was about to close the door when he hesitated. He said he wanted to mention something. He looked uncomfortable, but he told me he had noticed my mother's car driving really slowly past our house around midnight 2 nights earlier. My stomach dropped. 2 nights earlier was before she had shown up with the key. That meant she had been watching our house even before I knew anything was wrong. I asked him if he was sure it was her car. He said yes. He recognized it because she used to park in our driveway all the time when she visited. I thanked him for telling me and went back inside feeling sick. When I told my husband, we both just looked at each other. He did not say anything for a minute. Then he went to his laptop and started looking up security cameras. By noon, he had ordered a video doorbell camera with overnight shipping. When it arrived the next day, he installed it right away. It took him about an hour to mount it and connect it to our phones. We tested it over and over, walking up to the door and watching the notification appear with the live video feed. I felt a little safer knowing that if my mother came back, we would have proof. The camera recorded everything and saved it to the cloud, so even if something happened to the camera, we would still have the footage. That same afternoon, a huge flower arrangement arrived at our door. The delivery guy handed me this massive arrangement full of pink roses, baby's breath, and all kinds of fancy flowers. There was a card attached. I opened it, and my hand started shaking when I read it. "See you in the delivery room. Can't wait to meet my granddaughter." I was so angry I could barely see straight. She was treating the whole thing like a joke. Like I had not meant what I said. Like the boundaries I set were just temporary obstacles she could ignore. I took photos of the flowers and the card from multiple angles, making sure the card was clearly visible. Then I called a local nursing home and asked if they accepted flower donations. They said yes. So I drove over and donated the entire arrangement. I was not keeping anything from her in my house. The next morning, I had my first appointment with a therapist named Leah, who specialized in family boundary issues. My regular doctor had recommended her after I called crying about everything. Leah's office was in a small building downtown. When I walked in, she seemed calm and normal, and that helped more than I expected. We talked for almost an hour about everything that had been happening. She did not seem shocked by any of it. She said she had worked with many families dealing with boundary violations, and that my mother's behavior was definitely concerning. She helped me start making a safety plan for different situations. What to do if my mother showed up at the hospital. What to do if she contacted my husband's family. What to do if she posted something really damaging on social media. Leah also taught me breathing exercises for when I felt panicked. She told me I needed to take care of myself and the baby, and part of that meant managing my stress. I left her office feeling like at least one person understood what I was dealing with. 2 days later, I met with Officer Banks again at the police station. He had asked me to come in so we could work on drafting a cease and desist message. We sat in a small meeting room while he pulled up a template on his computer. Together, we filled it in with specific details about my mother's behavior and clear statements about what she needed to stop doing. No contact with me. No coming to my home. No attempting to visit me at the hospital. No posting about me or my baby on social media. Officer Banks said we were not sending it yet. He wanted me to have it ready in case I needed to file for a restraining order later. If I did file, it would help my case to show that I had tried other steps first. He saved the document and emailed me a copy. That afternoon, I called the hospital again and asked to speak with labor and delivery. I was transferred to MARTA. This was part of my pre-admission process, where we went over medical information, but I also wanted to finalize the security plan. MARTA and I set up a code word I would use when I arrived in labor. The code word was butterfly. It was random, and my mother would never guess it. MARTA explained again that the security team dealt with difficult family situations all the time. She promised me that without my code word and explicit permission, nobody was getting through the locked doors, not even if they claimed to be family, not even if they caused a scene. She gave me her direct number again and told me to call if anything changed. I was just starting to feel like maybe I had things under control when my phone rang from a number I did not recognize. I almost did not answer, but I thought it might be important. Maybe the hospital calling from another line, maybe the police with an update. So I answered. I immediately heard my sister's voice. She did not even say hello. She launched straight into it. She said I was destroying the family. She said I was breaking Mom's heart. She said I was selfish and cruel. She said I was going to regret this. She kept talking and talking, and I could feel my blood pressure climbing. My face got hot. My heart started pounding. I tried to say something, but she just kept going. Finally, I hung up on her in the middle of a sentence. I sat there holding my phone, shaking. My husband came over and asked what was wrong. I told him my sister had called, and he looked furious. He took my phone and blocked that number too. Then he made me sit down and do the breathing exercises Leah had taught me until my heart rate came back down. That night, I could not sleep. I sat at the kitchen table with my phone and started making a list. I created a document and titled it Emergency Contacts. At the top, I typed Officer Banks's direct number. Then I added the hospital security line that Marta had given me. I added the number for our lawyer friend. I added John's number because he had been watching out for us. Then I organized it by situation. If my mother showed up at the house, call John first to see if he saw anything, then call the police. If something happened at the hospital, call Marta and security. If we needed legal advice, call the lawyer. Just having it written out made me feel like I had a little control over what might happen. The next morning, my husband came downstairs looking upset, holding his phone. He showed me an email that had been sent to his work address overnight. It was from my mother. The subject line said, "Important information about your wife." When I opened it, my hands started shaking. She had written a long message claiming I was clearly having a mental breakdown from pregnancy hormones. She said my husband needed to protect our daughter from my unstable behavior. She claimed I was keeping the baby away from family who loved her, and that isolation was a sign of postpartum psychosis. I had not even given birth yet. She ended the email by saying she was available to help him get me the treatment I desperately needed. My husband looked embarrassed and said he was worried his coworkers might have seen it in his inbox. He forwarded the email to me so I could save it. Then he sent a message to his HR department explaining the situation. He added my mother to his spam filter and blocked her email address. I saved the email in my evidence folder with screenshots and the date. That evening, my husband and I sat on the couch together. He turned to face me, took my hands, and told me he was completely on my side. He said nobody was going to make him doubt me. He said that watching my mother's behavior get worse and worse had shown him I had been far too patient with her, not too harsh. He told me he was proud of me for protecting our family and that he would do whatever it took to keep us safe. I started crying. I had been terrified that my mother's campaign might work. I was scared he might start wondering if I really was overreacting. Hearing him say those things made me feel less alone. My next therapy appointment was 2 days later, and I brought all the new evidence with me. Leah looked through the work email, the screenshots, my sister's posts, and the call information. Then she helped me understand something I had not really thought about before. She said I was grieving the mother I wished I had, not the mother I actually had. She explained that it was completely normal to feel sad about enforcing boundaries, even when those boundaries were necessary for safety. The grief did not mean I was making the wrong choice. It just meant I was human, and I had hoped for something different. That made so much sense to me, because I did feel sad sometimes, even though I knew I was doing the right thing. I was not sad about losing my actual mother's presence, because her presence had always been stressful and controlling. I was sad about losing the idea of having a normal mom. A mom who respected me. A mom who could celebrate me without stealing from me. Leah taught me that I could grieve that loss and still protect myself and my baby. The morning after that therapy session, John knocked on our door looking very uncomfortable. My husband let him in, and John pulled out his phone. He said he felt weird showing me this, but he thought I needed to know. He opened his security camera app and showed us footage from 3 nights earlier. The timestamp was around 2 in the morning. In the video, I could see my mother walking slowly around our house. She went to different windows and looked inside, cupping her hands around her face to see through the glass. She tried the side gate to our backyard, but it was locked. Then she walked to the front of the house and stood on the porch for a while, just staring at our door. I felt sick watching it. This was not just showing up during the day. This was not just sending messages. This was sneaking around our home in the middle of the night and looking through our windows. John said his camera had motion alerts, and that was how he noticed it. He offered to send me the footage, and I immediately said yes. I saved it to my evidence folder and thanked him for telling me, even though it was awkward. After John left, my husband and I looked at each other and agreed we needed to go to the police station right away. We drove there that afternoon and asked for Officer Banks. He came out to meet us and took us into a small meeting room. I showed him everything I had collected. The emails, the texts, the Facebook posts, my sister's calls, the flowers and card. John's security footage of my mother prowling around our house at night. Officer Banks was kind, but professional. He did not act shocked. He did not act like I was being dramatic. He carefully logged everything into the system. He made notes about the pattern of behavior and how it was escalating. He specifically noted the neighbor's camera footage and my mother's threatening statements. He explained that all of this was going into an official report and that I could use it if I needed to file for a restraining order. He thanked us for documenting everything so thoroughly and said evidence like that made a huge difference. That evening, I checked Facebook before bed and saw that my mother had made a new public post. My stomach dropped as soon as I read it. She had written the name of the specific hospital where I planned to deliver. She said she would be there no matter what anyone said, because nobody could keep a grandmother from meeting her grandbaby. She tagged several family members. I took a screenshot immediately. Then I called Marta in a panic. It was late, but she had told me to call any time if something came up. She answered and listened while I explained the post. She told me not to worry. She said we would handle it. The next morning, Marta called me back and said she had coordinated with hospital security. They were adding a special flag to my file. That flag meant that if anyone called or showed up asking about me, staff would not even confirm I was a patient there. They would simply say they could not give out that information. Marta explained that the hospital dealt with domestic situations and stalking cases regularly, and they took patient safety seriously. She said the security team was trained for this, and they would make sure my mother could not get past the locked doors of labor and delivery. Knowing the hospital had a plan made me feel a little better. 2 days later, I got a text from my sister. I almost deleted it without reading, but I opened it. It was a formal invitation to a family gathering at my parents' house the following week. The invitation called it a family intervention to work through the misunderstanding. My sister said everyone would be there, and we could all talk calmly and figure things out. Part of me felt the pull to go. I still wanted things to be fixable. I still wanted there to be a way for this to become okay, but I knew better. I called my husband and read him the invitation. He said it sounded like a trap. Then I called Leah, and she agreed completely. She said walking into a room full of people who had already decided I was wrong would only give them a chance to gang up on me and pressure me. She reminded me that I had already tried to set boundaries multiple times, and my family had ignored them every single time. An intervention was not going to change that. I texted my sister back and declined. Then I screenshotted the invitation and added it to my evidence folder as more proof of the pressure campaign. In my next therapy session, Leah and I worked on something practical. She said I needed a simple script for moments when family members managed to get me on the phone or corner me somewhere. We came up with 2 sentences. I'm not discussing this. This conversation is over. That was it. 2 sentences. Leah had me practice saying them again and again until I could get the words out without my voice shaking and without apologizing afterward. She told me the key was not to explain, justify, or argue. Just state the boundary and end the conversation. We role-played different scenarios where family members might try to guilt me or argue with me. Every time, I practiced saying those 2 sentences and then pretending to hang up or walk away. By the end of the session, I felt like I might actually be able to do it if I had to. The next morning, I met Officer Banks at the courthouse. He walked me through every form I needed to fill out for the temporary restraining order. My hands shook as I wrote dates and descriptions of what my mother had done. Seeing it all on official paperwork made it feel more real and more frightening. Officer Banks was patient. He helped me organize everything in the right order and explained what the judge would want to see. I had to include the gender reveal incident, the baby shower name announcement, the unauthorized entry with the key, the threat she made, the Facebook posts, the footage, everything. After we finished the main paperwork, Officer Banks drove me to John's house so John could sign a notarized statement about what he had witnessed. John had written down the dates and times he saw my mother's car driving past our house, and he described the security footage of her trying to look through our windows. Having a neighbor willing to put his name on an official document meant everything. It proved I was not making this up. It proved I was not being dramatic. We got John's statement notarized at the bank and added it to the file. Back at the courthouse, I had to use the bathroom. That was when everything hit me at once. I locked myself in a stall and cried so hard I thought I might throw up. This was my mother. I was filing legal papers to force my own mother to stay away from me. But then I pulled myself together, washed my face, and went back out to submit the forms to the clerk's office. The clerk reviewed everything and stamped it received. Officer Banks told me I had done a good job and that this was the right thing to do. That evening, around 8, 2 police officers knocked on our door. I nearly had a heart attack, thinking something terrible had happened. But they explained that someone had called in a welfare check, claiming they were worried about a pregnant woman being held against her will at our address. The officers were very kind and apologetic once they realized it was a false report. They could see I was fine. My husband was not holding me prisoner. Our home was safe and normal. One of the officers told me they were going to note in their system that this appeared to be a malicious call, probably from my mother, meant to cause problems. He said false welfare checks were a crime, and if it happened again, they would investigate who made the call. After they left, I sat on the couch shaking. My mother had used emergency services to harass us. She had wasted police time and resources just to mess with me. Officer Banks called me first thing the next morning, before I had even finished my coffee. He had already heard about the welfare check from the responding officers. He said this was the final straw. He told me I needed to get the restraining order filed immediately because my mother's behavior was escalating in dangerous ways. We spent an hour on the phone while he helped me complete the affidavit describing the full pattern of behavior. He explained what to expect at the hearing, how to present myself to the judge, and what kind of questions I might be asked. He said the false welfare check was actually helpful evidence because it showed my mother was willing to lie to authorities and weaponize emergency services. I felt sick knowing that my mother's actions now involved police officers and court systems. But Officer Banks kept reminding me I was doing everything right. I was protecting my family. That afternoon, I drove back to the courthouse and handed my completed filing to the court clerk. She reviewed the paperwork and the attached evidence, then told me she was accepting the filing and would set a hearing date. My stomach dropped when she said the hearing was scheduled for 5 days later. That was very close to my due date, and the timing made me anxious. But the clerk explained that because of the threatening behavior and my pregnancy, they were moving the case through the system as quickly as possible. She said the judge took situations like this seriously and would review all my evidence before the hearing. I left the courthouse feeling two things at once: relieved that the legal system was taking me seriously, and terrified that everything was happening so fast. When I got home, my husband showed me another email my mother had sent him. The subject line was in all caps: last chance. My blood pressure spiked as I read it. She demanded that we apologize to her and let her back into our lives before the baby came. She wrote that this was our final opportunity to fix things, and that she would not be so forgiving if we waited any longer. My husband had not responded, and he said he had no intention of responding. We saved the email and added it to the evidence file. It showed she was still trying to find ways around my boundaries. It also showed she was still acting like the victim. The fact that she sent it to my husband instead of me proved she was trying to manipulate him and drive a wedge between us. During my next therapy session, Leah gave me homework that felt overwhelming but necessary. She said I needed to create a media blackout plan for the week I went into labor. That meant deciding exactly who would be told, when they would be told, and making sure those people understood they could not post anything online. We spent the entire session narrowing down the list of people I could trust. I realized I could not tell my father because he would tell my mother immediately. I could not tell most of my extended family because they had already been siding with my mother on social media. At first, the list had only 3 people: my husband's parents and my best friend from college. All 3 had proven they could keep information private. None of them would post anything on Facebook or Instagram. Leah made me practice exactly what I would say to them about why they could not share the news publicly. 2 days later, I came home from a doctor's appointment and found a wrapped gift sitting on our front porch. There was a card from my sister saying it was a present for the baby and that she hoped I would accept it even though we were not talking. Part of me wanted to throw it away, but I brought it inside and opened it. It was a stuffed elephant. A really cute one. Soft, sweet, and perfect for a newborn. For about 5 seconds, I was actually touched. Then I squeezed the elephant and felt something hard inside. I froze. I ripped open the seam. Inside the stuffing was an AirTag tracking device. My hands started shaking so badly that I dropped the elephant on the floor. Someone had deliberately hidden a tracking device inside a baby gift. My sister. My mother. Or both of them together. They had planned this. They wanted to track where the baby went. Or maybe they wanted to know when we left for the hospital. I could not think straight. I could barely breathe. My husband found me sitting on the floor, staring at the AirTag. He immediately took over and called Officer Banks, while I just sat there trying to process that my own family would do something so creepy. The next morning, we went to the police station and filed a supplemental report about the tracking device. Officer Banks took photos of the elephant, the torn seam, the AirTag, and the card from my sister. He added everything to the restraining order evidence file and said this was actually helpful for the court case, even though it was horrible for me to experience. He explained that hiding a tracking device in a baby gift showed a clear pattern of invasive and obsessive conduct that went far beyond normal family drama. He said the judge would see that my mother and sister were working together to stalk me and violate my privacy in increasingly serious ways. The tracking device proved they were planning something. Maybe they intended to follow us to the hospital. Maybe they wanted to show up wherever we took the baby. I felt validated that he took it seriously, but I also felt more scared than ever. That afternoon, my father called my husband's cell phone instead of mine. My husband put it on speaker so I could hear. My father admitted that my mother had taken the house key from his key ring without asking him. He said he noticed it was missing a few days after the incident at our house and confronted her about it. She confessed to taking it, but told him it was her right as a grandmother. My father sounded tired and sad, and for a moment, I thought maybe he was finally going to help us. Then he said he could not give a formal statement to the police because he could not betray his wife like that. I felt betrayed all over again. He knew exactly what she had done. He knew it was wrong, but he still would not help stop it. He chose loyalty to my mother over protecting his pregnant daughter and his granddaughter. My husband thanked him for the information and hung up. Then I cried because it felt like I had lost both my parents in this mess. That evening, my husband created a very specific list of exactly 2 people who would be allowed to know when I went into labor. His parents. That was it. We decided that even my best friend would find out after the baby was born because we needed the smallest possible circle. The next day, we drove to the hospital for a final pre-admission tour and practiced the code word system with labor and delivery staff. We met with Marta again, and she walked us through exactly what would happen when we arrived. We would use the code word at check-in. Our names would be hidden from the system. Staff would not confirm we were there. Security would already know about the no visitor list. We practiced saying butterfly out loud, so it would not feel strange when the real moment came. Having everything planned and tested made me feel more prepared. It made the actual delivery day feel a little less frightening. I knew the hospital had our backs. I knew my mother could not just walk in and ruin everything. We drove home that night, and for the first time in a while, I thought maybe we could actually do this. Maybe we could have our baby safely. Maybe my mother would not destroy this too. That night, I could not sleep. So I sat at the kitchen table around midnight with a notebook and started writing. I wrote about how much it hurt to lose my mother's place in my life. I wrote about how I could not keep accepting her behavior just because she was family. I wrote that I would rather have safety and peace for my daughter than chaos and constant violations of our boundaries. Putting the words on paper helped me process the grief. It also made me more certain that I was doing the right thing. I folded the letter and tucked it into my pregnancy journal so I could read it later if I started doubting myself. The next morning, my phone rang at 8:30. It was the court clerk. She told me the temporary restraining order had been granted based on all the evidence we had submitted. She explained that the judge reviewed everything, including the tracking device, the unauthorized key, the threats, and the neighbor's camera footage. The order said my mother had to stay at least 100 yards away from me, our home, and the hospital where I planned to deliver. Relief hit me so hard I almost cried. Now there was legal protection in place. But then the clerk explained that the order could not fully take effect until my mother was officially served with the papers by a process server. Until she received the documents in person, the restraining order existed, but it could not be enforced. The court had already sent a process server to my mother's house that morning. I waited by my phone all day, hoping to hear it was done. Around 4 in the afternoon, the process server called. My mother would not answer her door. Her car was in the driveway. He could hear movement inside the house, but she refused to come to the door. He left a notice and said he would try again the next day. It was infuriating because it seemed obvious she was avoiding being served on purpose. The following afternoon, I met with Marta for what she said would probably be our final appointment before my due date. We sat in a small office at the hospital while she walked me through exactly what would happen if my mother or sister tried to access the labor and delivery unit. She showed me a map of the floor and pointed out the locked doors and where security would be stationed. She explained that when I arrived in labor, I would give the code word at check-in, and my name would be removed from any system visitors could access. If anyone came asking about me, staff would say they had no patient by that name. Marta assured me that security would be called immediately if my mother showed up, and I would not have to do anything except focus on delivering my baby safely. Hearing the whole system explained step by step made me feel more prepared. That evening, around 7, I got a text from John with a photo attached. The picture showed my mother's car parked down the street from our house. The engine was running. Exhaust was coming out of the tailpipe. My hands started shaking when I realized she was actively watching our house right then. I immediately called Officer Banks. He said he would send a patrol car to document it and tell her to leave. About 20 minutes later, he called back and said patrol officers had spoken to my mother and she had driven away. But now we had proof that she was monitoring our house. The next morning, Officer Banks called with a new plan. Since my mother kept avoiding the process server at her house, he had arranged for the server to meet her at her workplace the next day during her lunch break. It felt aggressive to have her served at work in front of coworkers, but I was running out of time before my due date. The restraining order could not fully protect us until she actually received the papers. The following day around noon, I got a call from the process server confirming that my mother had officially been served with the restraining order papers at her job. Within an hour, she was posting angry rants on Facebook about being attacked by the system and persecuted for loving her grandchild. I screenshotted everything she posted, but I tried not to read the comments from family members taking her side. Now the restraining order was active. Now it was enforceable. If she came near me or the hospital, she could be arrested. 3 days later, I woke up at 4 in the morning with strong contractions coming every 5 minutes. I shook my husband awake. We quietly gathered the hospital bags and headed to the car. We did not tell anyone we were going. The plan was to wait until after the baby was born before making any announcements. The drive to the hospital was quiet except for me breathing through contractions and my husband holding my hand at red lights. Somehow, my sister figured out we were at the hospital. Maybe she saw our car leave. Maybe she tracked some pattern we had not noticed. Around 8 in the morning, She posted a vague Facebook status, asking if anyone knew which hospital in the area had the best labor and delivery unit. My husband saw it. We immediately turned off our phones and handed them to the nurse, so we would not be tempted to keep checking social media. Around noon, Marta came into my room looking calm but serious. She told me hospital security had just stopped my mother at the locked entrance to the labor and delivery unit. My mother had tried to get in. When security asked for the code word, she could not provide it, so they turned her away. Marta said security escorted her out of the building and told her she was not allowed to return. I felt terrified knowing my mother had actually shown up and tried to get to me. But I also felt relieved. The system had worked exactly the way Marta promised it would. About an hour later, Officer Banks came to the hospital. I could hear his voice in the hallway talking to security before Marta brought him to my room. He explained from the doorway that he had issued my mother an official written warning for violating the restraining order by coming to the hospital and attempting to access the labor unit. He said any further violations would result in immediate arrest, and that security had escorted her off the property with photos documenting the incident. I thanked him, and he left quickly because my contractions were getting stronger, and I needed to focus on labor. That evening around 7, I delivered my daughter with only my husband holding my hand in the room. After everything that had happened over the past few weeks, after all the fear and planning and legal paperwork, the actual birth felt peaceful in a way I had not expected. The room was quiet except for the medical equipment beeping and my husband whispering that I was doing great. When they placed my baby on my chest, I started crying, but not from pain or fear anymore. I cried because we had made it there safely. I cried because every boundary we had fought for had protected that exact moment from being ruined or invaded. My husband was crying too. We just sat there holding our daughter, not saying anything, because words felt too small for what we were feeling. Around midnight, they moved us to a postpartum recovery room down a quieter hallway. There was a small couch where my husband could try to sleep. Marta came by to check on us and went over the privacy plan for when we were ready to leave in a day or two. She reminded me that the no visitor flag would stay on my chart the entire time we were there. She also told us we could leave through a private exit near the loading dock when we were discharged. She showed us the exit on a little map and gave my husband a phone number to call 30 minutes before we wanted to leave so security could make sure the path was clear. I felt so grateful. She had never once treated me like I was being dramatic or difficult. She had taken every concern seriously. The next morning, around 8, my phone buzzed with a text from my father. "Congratulations, I'm sorry. Can I drop off a meal?" I stared at the message for a long time. I could not tell if it was genuine or if my mother had put him up to it as a way to get information. I showed the text to my husband. We talked quietly while the baby slept, trying to decide whether responding would open a door we were not ready to open. Finally, we decided that a brief thank you and permission to drop off a meal did not mean we were letting him back into our lives. It did not mean he had access to our daughter. My husband texted back a simple thank you and gave him our address with instructions to leave the food on the porch. That afternoon, while my husband napped, I thought about whether there might ever be a path forward with my mother that would not put our safety at risk. I decided maybe someday supervised contact could be possible if she got professional help and showed real change over time, but that was a conversation for the future. It was not something I needed to solve while I was still in the hospital. Learning how to nurse, change diapers, and function on 2 hours of sleep. We brought our daughter home 2 days later in the early afternoon. John was waiting outside on his porch when we pulled into the driveway. He came over immediately to help carry our bags and told us he had been keeping an eye on the house. He had not seen my mother's car or anyone suspicious. His kindness made me want to cry again. It reminded me that family is not only about blood. Family is about who shows up. Family is about who respects your boundaries. Family is about who helps carry your bags when you are exhausted and holding a newborn. A few days after we got home, I had a phone check-in with Leah scheduled for the afternoon while my husband watched the baby. She asked me questions about how I was sleeping, how I was eating, whether I was having scary thoughts, and whether I was feeling hopeless. She explained that, given everything I had been through with my mother over the past few months, I was at higher risk for postpartum anxiety and depression. She taught me more breathing techniques I could use when I felt panicked or overwhelmed. She reminded me that asking for help was not weakness. When my daughter was 2 weeks old, the restraining order hearing happened over video call from our living room. My husband held the baby while I sat on the couch with my laptop and watched the judge review all the evidence Officer Banks had submitted. The judge extended the restraining order for a full year. He also added conditions requiring my mother to attend counseling sessions with proof of attendance sent to the court. I felt an enormous sense of relief. The legal protection was solid now. It was documented. There would be consequences if she violated it again. That same evening, my husband and I worked together to write a careful email to our extended family explaining our position going forward. We said that any future contact with my mother would require proof that she was actively in counseling. We said visits would be supervised only. We said our boundaries were absolute and non-negotiable. We were not completely cutting off the possibility of reconciliation someday, but we were making it clear that the terms would be ours to set, not theirs. A few days later, I got a message through the hospital patient portal from Marta. She was checking in to see how I was doing at home. She confirmed that my medical records were still locked and flagged in their system, so my mother could not access any information about the birth or my recovery. She also sent links to postpartum support groups in the area and reminded me that I could always call the unit if I had questions or concerns. A few days after that, Officer Banks called around lunchtime while I was folding tiny baby clothes on the couch. He told me my mother had enrolled in a court-mandated counseling program after the violation warning at the hospital, and that the court had received her first proof of attendance. I felt a strange mix of hope and fear. Part of me wanted to believe she might actually change, but Officer Banks reminded me that restraining orders exist for a reason. He told me not to let my guard down just because she was going through the motions of counseling. People could attend therapy and still refuse to respect boundaries. He said I needed to stay alert and keep documenting anything that felt off. I thanked him and hung up, feeling like I had been given permission not to forgive her right away. I did not realize how badly I needed that permission. That evening, after my husband took over diaper duty, I went into the nursery and sat in the rocking chair with my daughter sleeping against my chest. The room was quiet except for her tiny breathing sounds and the hum of the white noise machine. I looked around at the changing table we had set up, the crib with the mobile hanging above it, and the bookshelf already filled with board books from friends who respected our boundaries. My home felt peaceful in a way it had not felt in months, maybe years, if I was being honest. The locks were changed, so my mother could not just walk in anymore. The boundaries were clear, and they were backed by legal documents with real consequences. The people who had access to our lives now were people who actually respected us, not people who thought love meant ignoring what we asked for. I realized I was grieving the grandmother relationship I had wanted my daughter to have. The kind where a grandmother comes over for Sunday dinners, teaches her to bake cookies, and tells her stories. I was also grieving the mother-daughter relationship I wished I had. One where my mom celebrated my moments instead of stealing them. One where she respected my privacy instead of going through my things. But sitting there in the dark nursery, with my baby sleeping on my chest and my husband humming in the next room, I knew I had made the right choice. My family was safe. Our boundaries were enforced with actual legal backing, instead of just being my word against hers. I was building the kind of home where my daughter would grow up knowing that love includes respect. She would grow up knowing it is okay to protect yourself, even from family. The circle around us was smaller now, but it was filled with people who truly cared about us as individuals, instead of treating us like props in their own story. And honestly, that was enough. That is how it happened from my side. Now I am curious what you think, because everyone always sees something different. Leave your thoughts in the comments, and let's talk about it. I always end up learning from you.